All right, we are back to talk the NFL draft, give a little bit of a recap of what we saw over the weekend, as well as, of course, Thursday and Friday night. Had a lot of fun on the live watch along. We had quite a few guests come on, and that was a great time, and we can talk a little bit more about that experience in a moment. But I did want to start things off, Mark, with the CBS Morning interview with Bill Belichick. Did you?
No, we're not going to. We're not talking about that. We're not going to talk about that.
Okay, Jordan. Okay, my biggest question is, what is going on with this shirt? What is going on with?
I saw one of the best tweets I've ever seen was, oh yeah, wait, yeah, the Bill Belichick is. It's this tweet, Emily Kate. Good job. It's the Bill Belichick is wearing a shirt older than his girlfriend.
I mean, it's probably twice the age. Of his girlfriend. Very bizarre, obviously, and for those who haven't been following along, he is dating a 24, 25-year-old who is now also in charge of like his
it's like manager.
It's his administrative assistant. She handles she's almost like his agent now too. Yeah. She interjected in this interview a couple times saying, "We're not talking about that. We're not talking about this." It's a bizarre situation, man. It's Bill Belichick doesn't strike me as the type of guy that gives up and lets other people run the show. But when it's a 24-year-old woman, maybe that's a different case.
So there's obviously a lot here to unpack, and I want to give credit to Nick Wright, who was on Colin Cowherd today. Colin Cowherd officially moved to Chicago. He's now doing his show from Chicago.
He's there now. Okay.
So shout out. He's in the club with us and other Chicagoans. But I will say this. What Nick Wright said I thought was really an interesting take, and it was the first time I kind of heard this take on it. He's probably not the first person to think of it. The first time I heard it was that this might be what's been going on maybe with this relationship for a while that other people may or may not have known about, i.e. the Atlanta Falcons, i.e. some other NFL teams who've considered maybe, why would you pass on Bill Belichick? Is that, hey, there's this now thing that's going on with Bill where he's got a manager / girlfriend / sugar baby type thing. I will say in Jordan's defense, which I give Colin Cowherd credit for, he's like, listen, I get it. Like this was the first time I'd seen, he's like, this was the first time the relationship made sense. Was like, oh my God, like she's managing all of this stuff for him that he can't manage. It doesn't want to manage to be successful as a famous person, as a college football coach. You've got to be on social media. You've got to talk to recruits on social media. You've got to be up to date with all this stuff. And she's handling for them. And Nick Wright
clearly didn't coach him properly because his answer, it was an awkward, one of the most awkward interviews that I've seen. Like he didn't have a good answer for talking about social media and stuff. So
no, but I mean,
what's going on?
To Nick Wright's credit, he's like, yeah, it's not weird if she's just that. Where it's weird, then it's like, oh, and now they're also like banging on the beach.
Yeah, right.
And I will say this: what I came up with, my rule with that I created with the weather guy Nick, who we met the weatherman on the stream. I said,
yeah,
it's not just that they're two consenting adults, because they are, right? That is a fact. There's no crime actually being committed. But when you are an older man or an older woman and you are having coitus relations with someone who is younger than your children, that's where I'm out. Like, that's where I'm out.
Yeah.
Like,
definitely.
This is a person younger than your children and you're having relations with them. That's where I'm out.
Look, maybe there's a possibility somewhere where people can genuinely fall in love with people. It's, age is just a number and stuff like that. It's hard. Like, I'm with you. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that and assume that there's nothing else it's clear as day. It's just love, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to wrap my head around that when it comes to cases like
But
this.
Bill's
And
also
it's
an interesting.
it's a tale as old as time too.
Yeah, Bill's also an interesting guy. I mean, he's had girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like he's not. Maybe it's just not his thing. Maybe he knows like being married and in a committed. It's just not his bag. And in a lot of ways, in this relationship.
Well, dude, when you're working the amount of, I mean, when you're as obsessed with a profession as he is, I'm sure the time you allot yourself to dedicate to your partner is not much.
I will say this: the other thing that we're bearing the lead, right, is where did they meet?
Well, I know, and that was the question. So I forget his name that the reporter asked.
He did a good job, by the way. Good reporter.
It was, yeah. No, he
handled it all well.
But no, yeah, he asked that question, and Jordan immediately shut down. We're not talking about that. And she's like, and she said it in such like a dark, menacing way, like in the corner, like no light. Just
because I thought it was
I thought
the whole thing about their story was the fun, like. Did you go to see Revenge of the Sith? I mean, episode 3 and the re-release this weekend?
Wait, did they? I didn't know they did that.
Hayden, wow. Yeah, okay. Which is to me the best Star Wars movie when Anakin becomes Darth Vader.
You think it's the best Star Wars movie? Really?
Yeah, it is because.
All right. Okay.
Well, and again, I think
to me, it's the best of the reboot of the reboot.
Absolutely,
but
of the prequels.
Millennial, yeah.
But I will say, for me, it just hits me. We were like 12, 13, 14 when that came out. And it was just like
nostalgic for sure.
To me, also, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan is probably the second best actor character in all of Star Wars behind Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Like he is perfectly cast and he is brilliant in the role. So you get his best movie, that lightsaber fight. I was 14 and I was like, this is the coolest thing of all time. I get in like the hindsight, you may argue, like if you were 14 when episode 1 came out or whatever, like, you know what I mean? A New Hope. I get why you'd say that's the greatest movie of all time, of the series. So that's where I come from at that angle.
Fair enough.
But I will just say that was the whole funny thing, right? Was that, no, we actually met on a plane and it was kind of innocent. And it just so happened I was seated next to Bill Belichick and we spent hours intellectually having this conversation. And then it was like, wow, hey, do you want to like keep in touch? Like, I really like talking to you. And then love. Like, so if that's not it, where do you meet?
And I mean, hey, you don't have to tell anybody, but it is weird when you've established this, persona now of like, we're putting ourselves out there, but that we're not touching that. That's an interesting.
Do you think Nick Wright's theory has any credence that like NFL teams kind of saw this as like we're not interested in this? Because he's already old. I mean, I don't know. 70. He's already 70. He's not been good the last 4 years draft wise, and he wants full control. Like he wanted to be the GM and all that stuff. Like, I think there's a nugget of truth.
Look, it might be a little thing. If you were truly like, on the fence of all fences, and this tipped the scales, okay, but. I don't think NFL, like at the end of the day, I think there's just several other factors that play into it,
because I don't think the University of
also we don't know if she would take on this role if he was in the NFL. Like, would she still be? She wouldn't. The NFL would not give her access to like emails and things like that. I don't think. Whereas like in the NCAA, he has more say at North Carolina, so he can kind of fill out his staff however he sees fit.
I feel
North
like
Carolina
it would be
a different dynamic.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. No, I'm sure they're probably regretting it right now. I mean, I can't even imagine what this like off season and year is going to be like for them. But we are here to talk about the NFL draft, and let's just get to it. Discuss our thoughts on how it went, the Shedeur fall, plenty of other steals in the draft, and a lots more to discuss. So let's dive in. So I will defer to you on how you want to address the Shedeur Sanders fall, because honestly, I agree with a lot of people, whereas it's really where they're saying it's very unfortunate that this is going to be called the Shedeur Sanders draft and that Shedeur Sanders is dominating the discussions around it. So we either get it out of the way now or we just address it when we talk with the Browns. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Get out of the way. It's pretty clear to me when you combine a middling prospect or certainly a not surefire prospect at any position, let alone the position of all positions. You combine that with a very outspoken father who has come out and basically said that there are teams he's not willing to have his son play for when he is that son's agent or manager, whatever you want to call it. And when you have reports about this prospect also bombing interviews and not coming prepared, and also multiple reports, multiple teams saying that they felt that he just didn't really care what they thought of him. He kind of walked in with that type of gravitas. When you put all that together, it's not too surprising to me that a prospect falls that far. I feel like 5th is kind of rough. Like, that seems a bit much, but did you ever see How I Met Your Mother?
No, I've not seen.
It's a show that definitely is not. It doesn't like hold up anymore. I tried rewatching it. It's really bad. I can't believe I ever liked it. But Barney, the character that Neil Patrick Harris plays, is like a player, and he talks about the Nicki Mendoza line, and it's about the hotness of women, and on a scale on like the x-axis, and then the y-axis is like how crazy, and like the crazy level, and what you're willing to put up with based on. Right. I think this is the Shedeur Sanders line of talent versus, attitude and personality and what you're willing to put up with. If he was a Trevor Lawrence style prospect coming out of college, he would have still gone. He would have gone number 1 overall. Teams would have said, we'll handle the baggage.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's probably just because he's not that great of a prospect, Mark.
So there's a lot, and I think you nailed. I think everything you said there is accurate. I want to give a little context to it, and I would argue that from everything I've heard, what you're saying is true. But I just want to give the listeners that context in case they don't absorb all the sports talk radio and everything like I do. I'm not giving anything that's an original idea, but from what I've heard, from the Schefters to the Peter Schregers, from all of the things that I consume and have consumed over the last four days, is number one, the NFL draft we know is the thing where GMs and coaches and owners have free range to lie as much as they want. And they use the media to lie as much as they want. That lives within this whole conversation. Number two, Deion Sanders is one of the all-time great NFL players and one of the all-time great NFL media personalities. Deion, before he was in coaching, if you're new to football, Deion was on CBS. Deion was on ESPN. Deion did Barstool Sports. He's been everywhere. And so Deion has a ton of friends in the media space. And what do people not like to do to their friend, especially if their friend is a giant star and a celebrity? Well, they don't like to lie to that guy, right? They do like to, they're not going to shoot him down. So
right, they don't like to out said.
Yes, I think there's a convergence of things going on, right? I think NFL GMs were not going to tell Deion, listen, your kid. What did I say 2 weeks ago or the scary thing to me was there was a graphic. His measurables were exactly Brock Purdy, size, 40 time, weight, height, everything was Brock Purdy. And what makes Brock Purdy special, we know now at the NFL level, is extreme accuracy and that little bit of wiggle he has, right? Well, that's Shedeur Sanders. He's extremely accurate with just that little bit of wiggle. Oh, okay, fun. But when you watch Brock Purdy play in big moments, there are times you go, dude, he looks small. It doesn't look like the guy. He's not Josh Allen leaping over people, being the guy who you would give up everything for to go get. So I think you had this building, right? It's this kind of like backed up toilet situation where it's like, oh, and we're going to flush it again. And oh, we're going to flush it again. And maybe this time it'll go down. And I don't think the Mel Kipers of the world are lying. When Mel Kiper looks at a prospect and goes, I think that's a first round guy. Because when you look at.
No, I believe he believes that.
Yes. And I do think, and listen, we also were told other people were first round grades and they don't go first round. Quarterbacks are obviously a little bit different, right? Luther Burden the third. There was a lot. I look back on it. You saw all the guys who was like, that's a first round prospect. That's a first round prospect. Well, second round. That's one of the reasons why guys are called steals or guys are that, not everyone can go in the first round. There's only 32 picks. So you have that, right? And then the last bit of context I want to give is the fact that we talked about this too. How many teams really needed a starting quarterback? Tennessee.
Raiders.
Cleveland.
I mean, and the Raiders, I guess, don't even technically are you talking need for this year?
I need a guy who can start for my franchise.
Yeah. Okay.
Tennessee, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Because even
New Orleans if Derek Carr is hurt.
Yes, in New Orleans if Derek Carr is really hurt. And that seems like a muddled situation. And so we don't know. We just don't know. But
even so, you're talking about 10% of the league. Yeah.
And then if you believe the Giants need a future franchise quarterback, we all believe they do. And now we hear the stories about how bad the meeting went with Shedeur and the Giants. And I don't think anyone at Shedeur's camp is coming out and totally denying that. So I think there's where there's smoke, there's real fire.
And Dable's denying it because Dable's also not going to burn bridges at a university that he's going to continue to scout. He's going to want Deion to still.
I trust the details that we're hearing from that meeting where they met a first time and they gave him all this homework to do for the second time and it wasn't done. And there's a story that they purposely in the game plan put one thing in there that anyone should spot is at least be like, hey coach, I got a question about this. Why this? And apparently he didn't spot it. But I also don't know if I blame Shedeur because, again, Shedeur's information that was being fed into him was, dude, you're a first round dude. You're a star. You're a first rounder.
Right.
And so Shedeur is thinking to himself, I'm a franchise changer. I'm a guy who could go number one. And why should he not think that? When everyone in his life around him who are real football guys, NFL Hall of Fame dad being like, we know talent, you're going to go you're a first rounder. For him to maybe look in some of these meetings, be like, why you question me on this shit? Apparently at one of the meetings, he said maybe I'm not your guy. Well, if you are Dylan Gabriel, right? If you are Tyler Shough, you're not saying that at all. You are saying everything you can. You are working your ass off in these interviews because you weren't, the highly recruited NFL Hall of Fame dad. So you add all of that together.
I mean, there's a truth to it because Tom Brady said to Bob Kraft, I'm the best decision you ever made. That could be seen as okay, dude, you're coming in hot. Oh yeah. And obviously, it turned out to be true, but
that's after he was already drafted. I'm going to show you my confidence.
I'm just talking about the confidence in general. That's something that you could see Tom Brady staying in a draft. Maybe I'm not your guy then if you're not willing to put up with my intensity.
So Dan, if you add all of that, right, and then you take what you said, and you have all of these NFL teams who are what's your grade on them? In their closed doors room, and none of Deion's people are listening, going, I think he's a backup. I think he's a Brock Purdy type backup. And if that's what's happening, right? This was a train headed off the rails out of control that no one truly saw coming. Because even the guys we trust, like a Peter Schrager, he said, yes, my sources were telling me he's maybe not a first rounder, but none of them thought the drop would happen. But
Nobody thought, yeah.
none of them knew how bad the scouting reports truly were, because I don't think NFL teams were truly being honest in any of this, because no one wanted to piss off Dion and the whole clout thing around.
Or they just wanted to use, they have this as leverage, having
True.
Shedeur available on the board, and not letting other teams know whether or not you're actually interested is very important.
And
Very
so, Dan, to put a button on all of that, I think what we got to remind ourselves is two big lessons we learned from this. Number one, we already know, we've learned the lesson over and over and over again. What do NFL head coaches, GMs, owners hate? Well, not all owners. A lot of owners don't hate it. But NFL coaches and GMs and players hate the celebrity backup. Cam Newton was more talented than a lot of guys, but couldn't be a backup because he's Cam Newton. Tim Tebow could not have a career as a backup because he was Tim Tebow. Johnny Manziel could not have a career as a backup quarterback because he's Johnny Manziel. Who were guys who were built for backup quarterbacks? The Mitchell Trubiskys, the Marcus Mariotas, the quiet, don't do anything, don't say anything, but enough talent to be like, all right, and then a good locker room guy. That's what you want for a backup quarterback. If NFL teams are viewing him as a non-starter, like, no, this guy's not a first-round pick. He's not going to change our franchise. Well, then the last thing you want is to draft a guy who's going to be, your fans going to be like, start him. And so I think a lot of NFL teams probably looked at it and said, we're not even going to touch him till at least the third round, because if it's after the third round, then the fans aren't clamoring, right? They're not going, start Shedeur, come on, start Shedeur. So that's lesson number one that every NIL quarterback needs to learn right now, is that if you are a stud college quarterback right now and you're getting NIL deals, humble yourself. Continue to humble yourself when you get in the NFL, because the NFL is going to show you what they showed Shedeur Sanders. And they're showing you that we are a different thing here. You may have made $10 million. If you're going to come in with that type of attitude and we don't have you as an absolute franchise changer, then you're not worth our time.
Right. Yeah. It's just not worth it. Right.
And then the second lesson we've learned, again, college quarterbacks, this thing is going to get ugly for some of you guys. Quinn Ewers turned down reportedly $5 million from a Big Ten school to enter the draft, and he ended up drafted in the 7th round. So you're going to see guys stay in college. Quinn Ewers is and Shedeur Sanders. He could have stayed at Colorado and made $10 million this year. He's going to make in his contract less than $1 million probably as a 5th round pick. Maybe $2 or $3 million.
Shedeur is a different case because he was banking on being a first rounder, and next year's quarterback class is way more competition. So if either of them deferred to next year, they would run the risk of being, a bottom,
look at a
6
guy like
to 10 quarterback.
I just think you're going to continue to see guys say, hey, holy crap, I cannot risk happening what happened to Quinn Ewers. And I think for a lot of ways, it's good for guys, because let's be honest, a lot of these guys aren't.
What was the expectation for Quinn, though? Was he projected as like a 5th?
2 years ago, Quinn Ewers was the articles. It was a lot like Sam Howell. Remember, Sam Howell went back to North Carolina, and everyone was like, Sam Howell's going to go in the number 1 pick. Then he went in the 5th round. Which, speaking of Sam Howell, this is my final thing I have on Shedeur Sanders. There's good and bad news. You ready? Ready for this? This is from I want to give him credit. NFL on CBS. Mark Brunell was a 5th round quarterback who actually made himself some Pro Bowls and had a good career. Mark Brunell.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There are 67 other quarterbacks who've been drafted in the 5th round.
Ever?
Yes. And Mark Brunell is the only one to make a Pro Bowl.
Are you serious? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So, Dan, listen to.
Okay.
It's an
interesting round because the 6th round has produced more, I would imagine.
Over the last decade, these are your 5th round quarterbacks. Okay. You ready for this? Kevin Hogan, 2016. Nathan Peterman. Mike White. Mike White had a little run there. Mike White had a run. Clayton Thorson. Easton Stick. Jake Fromm, State Farm. Sam Howell, 2022, who's now in Minnesota. Jaron Hall, who's in Minnesota, who I liked out of BYU. Remember that kid? Sean Clifford. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who can't play in the league. Clayton Tune, who can't play in the league. Jordan Travis, don't know, but he was drafted by the Jets last year. And then Spencer Rattler. So that's just the last decade. There is not a lot. And now Shadeur's different, right? Because I do think we all agree, and I think NFL GMs would agree, his talent is more of second, third rounder. But when you add in the attitude and the celebrityness, that's why he fell to the 5th round.
Yep.
So can we talk a little bit about now Cleveland? And I do think the positive.
Well, yeah, because I wanted us to talk about some of the teams that we felt came away with really good drafts, and Cleveland is in my top 5 list.
Dude,
I think they had a phenomenal draft.
Totally
so
agree.
Yeah, let's
the
talk
first rounder for next year. And I'll end my Shedeur on this is that, dude, if he really is a first guy who's a franchise changer, Dan, he'll win that job.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco can't start 17 games. He'll his arm, his body, he doesn't have it. He'll probably start the season. If you can't beat out Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, then you don't deserve to be you deserve to be a 5th rounder anyway.
It's a really good spot for Shedeur. I don't know if it's the best spot, but it's a really good spot for him because he doesn't have much competition to contend with. Even if Joe Flacco is a better quarterback, clearly, he's an older quarterback who's got a year, at most. Like Shedeur, I'd be really surprised if Shedeur doesn't make this team. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to end up having to trade one of these guys.
So I love the Mason Graham pick. I think Swessinger is a really good player.
You trade back. I mean, you trade back away from an all-time prospect. You get a 2nd-round pick and next year's first, and you still end up with Mason Graham. Pretty good.
They have next year's first for the Jags. And that
exactly.
Let's be honest. The Jags are not picking in the 20s next year. They may pick in the teens, but I don't think the Jags are picking in the 20s next year. And so
Probably
if you're Cleveland,
not.
You say to yourself, we're probably picking at max in the early teens, right? Plus we have probably early teens at best. Let's just say the Cleveland Browns end up with the 9th and 11th
14th?
pick next year. Would that be crazy? And then if they don't feel like their quarterback is on their roster, if Shedeur doesn't pop, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't pop, if Kenny Pickett doesn't pop, they have a ton of ammo to go get their guy because they have the multiple first-round picks. So, and kudos to them. And Mason Graham's a great player. Him and Swessinger are going to play in the middle of that Browns defense for the next 5-6 years and be really, really good. Judikin's a good running back. We'll see what they.
I loved the double dip there with Judkins and Dylan Sampson, and the Judkins pick is what they were able to get with Jacksonville. So this allowed them to build a well-rounded backfield, whereas maybe they weren't going to go that route initially, but they were like, now we can afford to take a Judkins, which is a total pounder, like in the middle is going to get those tough yards, and then we get a total speedster, in Dylan Sampson to break the big run.
Everyone wants to copy Detroit, Montgomery, and Gibb.
It's not a bad. They get hurt, and we're talking about Stefanski's system here. Like they need, they want running backs. They want to run the football.
All right, keep going. What's the next team on your list you think had a really good draft? I'll let you keep
team
going.
On my list. Yeah, I didn't rank them. I just put 1 through 5, but they're not ranked. To me, Arizona had a great draft. I love their first 2 picks. Especially, I love getting Walter Nolan and Will Johnson, being able to nab both of those. Great value for Will Johnson there at pick whatever it was, 43. And then just hammering defense. Like this was the team's biggest need by far. We know that they could use maybe some offensive line help, and they took a flyer late. But I just like the approach to we're gonna in defense was definitely where the majority of the depth was in this particular draft, outside of running back. So I love the fact that they're just stockpiling there. Let some things stick. We're getting DBs. We're going to make our pass defense strong. You know, Kyler Murray, the pressure's on still, but Jonathan Gannon being a defensive guy in the first place, like, I really like what they came away with here in the draft.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think when you have a defensive head coach, you hope he can develop all of this talent, right? And listen, this is a make or break year for Arizona. Gannon going into year 3 now.
Yep.
And then Kyler, after this year, you can really move on from that contract. So for both of them, it's a make or break year. And for the franchise, this is like, hey, we gotta know what our direction is going. We can't just keep sitting here in 3rd and 4th in this division, a very tough division, and a division with a ton of offensive talent. So to bulk up on defense, I agree. I think that's a good draft.
Yeah, and Warren Sharp also put out an awesome tweet, and I tweeted it out. It's a very long thread, but it's his team by team analysis of their picks relative. He aggregated all of the projected values. So it wasn't just one person's projections. It was all, everyone's projections. And then he aggregated it all. And did this team, where did they take the player at, and what was the value then relative to what the perceived value was?
He's so good. I love
going
Sharp.
into it.
I gotta look at that.
And so he had the Falcons actually as the number 1 team in terms of drafting players for value throughout the whole draft. The Browns were number 2. The Cardinals were number 3.
Do you have the Falcons on your list?
I didn't put the Falcons on my list because I personally thought they went. I didn't love their draft. I liked the first 2 picks, but I just felt like, and look, they only had 5 picks here, so it wasn't like they had a ton of opportunity. But yeah, I thought it was okay. I thought it was okay.
The Falcons were on my list of like, okay, they had 2 first rounders, and I do like that you go Jalen Walker and give James Pierce. I mean, the guy's got so much upside. And you have a defensive head coach. So you say, hey, you're going to go and you're going to get these guys right. And these 2 could be studs for years to come. That's great. But you gave up next year's first. And
I didn't like the trade.
To give up next year's first for pick 26, that's what teams do if you feel like you're a Super Bowl contender, right? And you're just like, we're now a piece away, and this is our piece, and we're going to say screw it because we need this piece because we have got to go get this guy to make our Super Bowl run. You give up a first if you want to move in the top 10, right? You like next year's first, screw it, I'm moving up in the top 10. I'm getting an elite player. There's some big question marks with James Pierce Jr. I like him. I had him projected as the first round. If you just draft him in the first round and he goes into the right system. I do think he's going to the right system with the right coach. So I'm not going to hate that much on it.
Sure.
But you give up next year's first. And when the Falcons aren't picking in the first round next year and the Rams are picking maybe pick 12 or 13 because that's where the Falcons end up. And that's going to look really good for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, and per Warren Sharp's charting, the Falcons rising up to number 1 was because of their Watts, Bowman, and Nelson picks. So it actually wasn't.
And Xavier Watts is a very, very good player. I don't know much about Bowman. I got to be honest. And Nelson, listen, you take.
I didn't know much about.
You take a tackle from Wisconsin, it's worth a flyer in the 7th round. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the Giants, man. I mean, they had an interesting draft, to say the least, and I really liked. Obviously, Abdul Carter was a clear, like, you got to go for that. The blue chip prospect. I do think trading in for Jackson Dart, like they're clearly, planting their stake with Jackson Dart, so it's got to pan out because they trade back into the first round to get him. I think he's got a lot of tools, and he does resemble in terms of play style and some production in college of a Josh Allen light. So I can understand why Brian Daboll and company like him, but this has to pan out for, I think, this draft to to really, work out for that trade. But, getting Scadaboo in the 4th was a good pick. And, he's a guy that probably would have been a second round pick in most drafts, but the running back class is just so deep. So I did like where they went. I mean, Abdul Carter's an absolute monster. Their defensive front is really good.
Nasty.
Yeah.
So wait, was it the Falcons traded with the Rams? Who did the Giants trade in with the first round to get back in?
Yeah, let me double check on this.
Because just as I say, I don't like trading back into the first round for an edge. I don't mind trading back into the first round for your quarterback if you think that's your
look, if you really believe it and you think that he's for sure the guy of the future, then I have, obviously no problem with it.
And listen,
of course, this article doesn't talk about.
Yeah. And of course, Dable is coaching for his job. What's his name is GMing for his job. And if you're Joe Schoen, and if you're the Mara family, listen, you made this bed, right? So if it's a disaster this year, a lot of it's on you because you could have cleaned slate. It's like the Bears, like when it's like you made this bed, so you've got to sleep in it. I actually think, depending on how this year goes, I think there's a real chance the Giants could be a surprise, like sneaky 7-win team, maybe. I got to look at their schedule. Obviously, I don't know their schedule, but that defensive line, listen, if your team can do one thing at an elite level, you're not going to be a disaster. And that defensive line is going to wreck people. And in that division, when you're
Especially
going up against Jane Daniels and you're going up against Jalen Hurts and Dak, those are going to be epic matchups to watch, that defensive line versus those offensive lines. And then when you add in the fact that, you're going to probably start the year with Russell Wilson, a capable quarterback. Texans move back to Giants pick at 34.
Yeah, so the Giants traded their 34th, number 34, number 99, and next year's 3rd.
Yeah, so listen.
They could have gone Jackson. Now that, hindsight's 2020, they could have gone Jackson Dart for at pick 34.
But they didn't give up did they give up next year's 1? Did you just say that?
Next year's 3rd. Yeah, no. So nothing, no early rounders next year. So it's not a crazy,
no,
that's a crazy amount they gave up.
That's great. And I think, listen, I'm not high on Jackson Dart. We've talked about this pregame, but I like Jackson Dart at 25, and I like Jackson Dart with Brian Dable, and I like Jackson Dart not having to start the season right away. Now, if he earns the job, I could see him earning the job. I mean, that's a rough quarterback room. So we'll see. It's a fun draft, and I certainly get why the Giants are considered maybe a team that is a winner. You get your quarterback, you had 2 first-rounders, maybe the best player in the draft in Abdul Carter. You get your quarterback, and you don't have to give up next year's first. That's a W.
Let's talk about your Bears, man.
All right.
Obviously we reacted live.
Look at all those trades
during the watch along, which we got to do that next year because that was a lot of fun.
My brother Phil texted me on Friday, like, "Oh, are we running it back?" I'm like, "No, dude. Like, I'm hungover right now. Like, we gotta hold off here." I want to carefully jump into this. If you're a fan of this show, I am an eternal optimist, and I love my team, and I will always ride or die for my team. I fucking love this draft. Just look at it. It looks so good. It looks so good. It's so juicy. So
do you want to know where Warren Sharp had him on the
Oh, I don't care, Warren. Warren, probably low. Probably low.
I actually don't know where the
check him out. See where he has it, because I do love Warren Sharp, and it is interesting. I would imagine it's not terribly low because Luther Burden, I know a lot of people graded him as a 1, as a first rounder. I certainly thought he would go in the first round. We did our mock. So here's what I love about it. The 3 second-round picks to me are all guys that I think have really high ceilings. And when you look at Turner from Texas A&M, he is exactly the kind of guy that is going to fit in with this new defensive scheme, right? Allen is the new D coordinator. He loves that like bigger defensive tackle end hybrid. That's why they signed the guy from Indianapolis who they signed. So you add Turner into that rotation of defensive linemen. I think now the Bears defensive line, while no, you still only have Sweat as the star. There's 3 guys plus Billings like that are just like kind of big monsters who aren't like, it's not like you put a thin, tiny edge guy on the outside who's only a pass rush specialist, right?
Specialist, right? Yeah.
Like that side of the defensive line, and Sweat's a big dude too. Like, so this is a big physical defensive line. So I really, really like that. I know maybe the sack numbers aren't there, but I really, really like that. Ozzy Trapillo from Boston College, 6'8", 315. Little bit of a project, but again.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about him.
But again, Ben Johnson is what I love about it, right? I'm bringing in an offensive coach who should, with Ryan Poles, be able to look at talent and evaluate and coach someone along. You would love that Ozzy Trapillo in a year from now is your starting left tackle. Braxton Jones is a very average starting left tackle in the NFL. The rest of the offensive line for the Chicago Bears is above average or elite. Wright is above average right tackle. You have an elite center and you have an elite left guard with Dahlman and Tooney. And then at right guard, you have a guy who's been injured, but when has played as an above average player. So this now offensive line aggregate is, I would argue, an above average offensive line. And if Ozzy can grow and develop and fill out, and at 6'8" become your stalwart left tackle and become an above average left tackle for the future, that's great. He doesn't have to come in and start right away. But his sizing and his frame, unlike Amagaji, the kid from Yale who they drafted last year in the 3rd round, like, this is a body who I know is not going to get overwhelmed at the NFL level. So if Ozzy has to start and you move Amagaji then as like a 3rd tackle swing, like, it just gives your offensive line so much more depth. You needed that pick. So I really, really like it. Luther Burden the 3rd, let's talk about it. I think he's a day 1 starter. I think you add him with DJ Moore and with Rome Odunze, you have a very diverse, really fun, really dynamic wide receiver core. I love it. He's a dog. Everyone calls him a Deebo Samuel type. That's exactly what this Bears offense need. You have the big playmaker in DJ Moore. You have the 3rd down hands over the middle catch guy in Rome Odunze, who's also a big body in the red zone. And now I'm going to get a physical weapon with Luther Burden too. That's so much fun. Like, he is an instant day 1 starter in the slot. And I think he's going to get really creative in Ben Johnson's offense. Apparently the story was Jameson Williams, who we all know how fun he was in Ben Johnson's offense, went to high school with Luther Burden and texted Ben Johnson right away, like, you got a dog. Like, this dude's a dog. And so I love that. Love hearing that. And then obviously the tight end. We talked about Colston Loveland a lot on draft night. If you missed that, I'll just quickly say, I don't need him to be Rob Gronkowski. I think he has the potential to develop into a Jimmy Graham physical. I don't think everyone's saying he's Sam Laporta. I think he's a little more finesse than that. I think he's a good blocker. But I think when you actually watch him, he runs, to me, routes more like Jimmy Graham, where it's like, this dude just gets open. He's so long and so fast. He looks like Jimmy Graham. Like, he looks like that's a basketball player who's now a football player, which is fine because Cole Kmet is a physical run-you-over beast tight end. I do not need Colston Loveland to be Jimmy Graham. I don't. What I need him to be is enough of a weapon and enough of a presence, which I think he's enough talented to do, to where it's like, shit, well, we have to cover him. We have to concern ourselves with him. And if I'm a defensive coordinator and I'm looking at the Bears offense now going, shit, we got to concern ourselves with that guy. And you have DeAndre Swift out of the backfield, who could catch and run like one of the best NFL running backs in the NFL, and Cole Kmet, who's a physical beast of a tight end. And then the wide receiver core I just talked about, that is the thing now where I'm like, and Ben Johnson's going to move everyone around in pieces and play around. That's what makes me excited. I don't think there is a 1,700 12 touchdown catch guy in this receiving core. But I think from tight ends and receivers, I think you have a lot of guys who all could be like 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like they're all capable of putting up all of those numbers. I think it's going to be a very, very shared system, diverse system, and Colston Loveland's a huge part of that. So
Were you at all concerned in such a deep and rich running back class that they didn't grab a running back in the middle rounds?
No, because the kid out of Rutgers is really fun. I've watched his highlights now at the very end of the draft. They got him in the 7th round. And again, I didn't see running back as a weakness. It's not like a strength. Listen, DeAndre Swift's not a top 10 guy, but he's not a joke. And when DeAndre Swift had some games last year, and again, I'm getting everyone. I'm expecting every single person who started on the Bears last year, who's still going to start on the Bears next year, to increase their ability by 10% because they now have a coach in Ben Johnson, right? Like that. I have to build that in because I did not have a coaching staff I trusted. Now, again, I may learn I'm wrong, and Ben Johnson might be a joke and a fool, and maybe I may be hanging myself on this podcast in 8 months from now. But I'm telling you right now, people who are like, if Ashton Jeanty was there, I believe they would have drafted him. And I think if you look at why there's so many trades, someone did the whole breakdown. In the 3rd and 4th round, there was multiple trades for the Bears because the running back was picked like 2 picks before them, and then the Bears traded down. Running back picked 2 picks, or Bears traded down. So I think they had their eyes on guys. But again, Roschon Johnson,
they're not going to reach though.
And you have Swift, and you're bringing this kid from Rutgers, and now there's all these rumors that they may be giving a flyer on Nick Chubb. Like, I think the Bears are going to be dynamic on offense and be able to run the ball with a lot of different guys in the backfield because I have a head coach who's going to scheme running open, and I have a head coach who's got an improved offensive line. So, again, yes, I would have loved a Jeanty or a Omarion Hampton to be there. They weren't there, and I'm glad we never decided to just trade up for a guy because you feel like we need a guy. I never got that.
Yeah. Warren Sharp had them at 24th overall based on the value. But again, this is one metric, one person. So it is what it is. Go. Let's look at the Steelers draft. I really liked their draft, to be quite honest with you.
I totally agree with you.
They ended up trading and picking up an extra pick, albeit a late one. I'm gonna just there are really 3 picks I absolutely love in this draft, but I want you to guess what is my favorite pick in this group.
If I were you, my favorite pick would be Jack Sawyer. I think he's a stud.
Interesting. Okay. It's not Jack Sawyer. I do think he's a stud.
I think he's a really good player who played in the Big Ten and was able to put up numbers against very good Big Ten offensive linemen in very NFL-style offenses. If it's not him, then listen, I think Caleb Johnson's also very good. Derek Harmon's very good. So I'm interested. Was it Yana Black?
My favorite pick was Will Howard in the 6th round. I thought that was a great pick. I thought it was a great value in the 6th round for a national championship winner. I had compared him to an athletic Mac Jones.
Yeah.
But the more I hadn't watched the Gruden camp. I watched the Gruden camp with him and some more in-depth stuff. And it got me more convinced that he's a guy that at least has the capability to potentially be a starter in the NFL. And if he's not, then you hope that you have a long-term backup. And in the 6th round, I just think that's great. I really liked it to get a national championship seasoned quarterback who can run the football and throws a good deep ball and is accurate for the most part. I think that's really good. The Jack Sawyer pick I did like in terms of I think this was a pick where Pittsburgh wasn't looking to take an edge, but when they were in the 4th round and they're like, shit, Jack Sawyer's still here. Like we have to take him now.
And we're going to edge defensive linemen in Pittsburgh into stars.
Edge is a massive, massive part of what they do.
Yeah.
And so if TJ goes down, you've got Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig, and Herbig's best when he is a specialist, 20 plays, 30 plays a game type of guy who can come in and just pass rush. So I understand the pick. You round it, you get more depth there to help buffer that. Caleb Johnson is a Najee Harris that can actually break big runs.
Yeah, so he's good. He's good.
I freaking love that pick, man. He was facing 8-man boxes the entire season because everyone knew Iowa wasn't going to throw the ball. And he still averaged, over 5 yards a carry and broke off 25 runs of 20 plus yards. Incredible stuff. So yeah, no, that I was really psyched about that one. Carson
and you already know what he looks like in the black and gold. You already know what he looks like in the black and gold.
Yeah, same with Caleb Johnson. They took Logan Lee last year. They're doubling down on Iowa players for sure. But Carson Bruner is actually a son of a current Steelers assistant and a former Steeler player himself. And apparently he was sitting on the exact same couch that his dad sat in when he got drafted by the Steelers 30 years ago. So
they need a new couch. They need a new couch.
They definitely need a new couch. But no, Derek Harmon, really liked that pick. We talked about on the podcast. If they weren't going to go quarterback there, I wanted them to draft Cam Hayward's replacement, and they got one of those top dudes at the D-line, an absolute tenacious pass rusher. I love that they got Caleb Johnson, a home run hitter. They have not gotten splash out of the running back position for a decade. So to get a guy that can rip off big runs and also just carry a workload is awesome. And yeah, I just thought this was where they kind of let the draft come to them. They filled needs, but they didn't try and do anything crazy. And again, really like the Will Howard pick there. He's also in a good position because he doesn't have much competition. And once Aaron Rodgers gets there, which I'm still fully anticipating that happening, he's going to get to learn from Aaron Rodgers, and there's no pressure. And he can get there and he could beat out a, Mason Rudolph, or he should be able to, and he'll have a really, really good shot of making this team. And if he does, I think he could be a really long-term backup. And that's great to get out of your 6th round.
We said of Will Howard, when I did my quarterback breakdown like a month
ago.
Yeah,
you were higher on him than I
was very high on him. And my big thing was when you watch the footage, it's like, wait, what am I missing here? Like, he's really mobile, a big arm, and yes, there are a couple of accuracy issues, but that's
built, dude. He's 6'4", 236.
That's the stuff you actually can coach. You can coach accuracy, right? You can work on fundamentals. You can't coach 6'4", 236, right? Like that. He's a big dude,
and leadership, obviously, and
he played at Kansas State, then went over obviously to Ohio State. I like it. I'm with you. I think there's potential there. Was there any other teams you wanted to talk about, or can I just bring up? I just want to bring up one team's draft because I don't really know what the rest of their draft looked like. And I was like, as we're talking here, I'm like, I really want to see Tennessee. What did Tennessee do after?
Tennessee had a good draft. I also want to look at the Patriots. They were my last name on there. But where's Tennessee?
Cam Ward, to me, Cam Ward. I'm so happy if I'm a Tennessee fan because no one's talking about Cam Ward. Like, he's the least.
Todd McShay loved this draft, by the way. He was like obsessed with this draft, and this was like his favorite. But yeah, no, Cam Ward doesn't get talked about enough. He's really good.
Scroll down because I think
Oladeju is really talented. Io Manor is a really good underrated receiver. I was surprised he went in the 4th round. I thought he was going to go way earlier. I'm honestly not familiar with much down here.
Okay.
Todd McShay was a
You can go
huge
back
fan
up.
of Jackson Slater, I believe.
Gunnar
They
Helmet,
addressed a
Texas.
lot.
Gunnar Helmet, Texas is a fun player. That's kind of fun. 4th round tight end.
Yeah.
Kevin
In,
Winston
in a
Jr.
deep tight end class, Gunnar Helm probably would have been a late 2nd, early 3rd round pick in most other years.
Yeah, and
Winston's also, he's really good. He is a thumper.
2 guys who should start on your defense day one.
Yeah. So 2 starters on defense and your franchise quarterback.
Tennessee's going to be really. Yeah,
DK, right? He was like a big deep threat, like a home run. Tied for the 3rd fastest 40 too. So yeah, like you get him someone else there with Calvin Ridley and company. It looks like they're helping build for Cam Ward and getting that defense right.
I also heard Tennessee, I think they signed Cam Ward's number 1 receiver from Miami who didn't get drafted. A white kid. Yeah, just a volume catch guy too. Listen, I just want to show Tennessee's fans some love. I think Cam Ward, the more I'm watching the video, did you see that video of Shedeur and him working out together? And Shedeur,
no, I don't think so.
Oh, dude,
he probably makes Shedeur look very small, I would imagine.
Well, and Shedeur goes like, we need to make a song. Because Shedeur's obviously got a rap career. And Cam Ward goes, no, I just play football. And Shedeur's like, come on, you got to have hobbies. He's like, no, I want when people say my name. And it literally says, he's like, I want people to say my name, Cam Ward, American football player. And he's just like, the Shedeur's kind of like, okay, like we got to get this man some hobbies. Like, he's kind of performing for the cameras. Where Cam Ward is just like, I don't know why the cameras are here. I thought we were
all about business. All business.
Yes. And for a kid, when you start to see more of the story of the 0-star recruit, his time at Washington State, getting the chance last year at Miami, you never know how it's all going to work. But I think if Tennessee with an offensive coach, if they can find their way in that division this year and build, they're not ready to win now, but if they can build, and I think there's some building blocks there in that draft. I think this kid he's got some Lamar Jackson attitude in there where it's like, oh, that's just built different. Like a guy who you would think would be into the rap and the fame and all that stuff, number 1 pick, and just humble is all get out. Even his speeches on draft night, his fit on draft night, it's a lot of humbleness. And when Warren Moon introduced him,
that was super cool. He gave him his
number. Said, hey, you can wear number 1. And Warren Moon can justify it, right? Like I wore this for the Houston Oilers. I never played for the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans weren't a thing. But you, young man, go make your legacy with the Tennessee Titans. I thought it was a really, really cool moment. And again, you could see how much that all meant to him. And not like in a selfish way, like, oh, I get my number, but in like I appreciate like everything I've seen from him since being drafted, draft night, and all this stuff that's come out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of drinking the Cam Ward Kool-Aid here now. So congrats to Tennessee. I think it's a solid draft from what I see.
Yeah, the last one I wanted to talk about was just New England, and that's because it's hard to have a bad draft when you have 11 picks. They made 11 selections in this draft.
They were drafting every other pick. It was crazy.
I just love that they were clearly giving Drake May all of the support they could give him. Will Campbell in the 1st round, which his interview was awesome. He was like tearing up. He's like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to die. I'm going to die for this
guy. In that
guy.
Southern accent. He's got that like Southern accent.
Great. Travion Henderson, I think he fits really well in that system. And with Mike Vrabel, he seems like a Mike Vrabel guy. Yep. Kyle Williams, really talented receiver out of Washington State. Then they go and get a center. They get back and go in offensive tackle late. And then they rounded out with some edge and D linemen in the middle. Like it was a really well-rounded draft. And I think this is what the Patriots needed. They needed just to get a bunch of guys because their team was so watered down in terms of the talent level across the board.
And listen, you hit on probably 50% of draft picks if you're lucky. So if you got 11, you should hopefully have 5 or 6 guys
starters. Yeah.
That you say to yourself in 2 or 3 years from now, they're still playing and they're playing at a high level for your team. And can I just really point out really quickly, when you scroll to the top and then scroll down, LSU, Ohio State, Washington State, Big Ten, Where did they end up? Washington State.
Well, yeah, wait, was Washington? Yeah, where did Washington State go? That's
I think Mountain West or Pac-12 or Pac-10 or whatever or ACC. Were they one of those that got scrubbed? But anyways, Georgia.
This still says Pac-12.
Okay, Georgia, Florida State, LSU, Miami, Missouri. I mean, not messing around here. Vanderbilt, Memphis. They're not messing around. Like, one of the things that I get frustrated with Ryan Poles about is his like insistence on the
MAC.
Oh, no. We found Karen Amagaji from Yale.
Yeah.
It's like, don't outthink the room.
Trying to be a little too show off, like
draft the 6'6" tight end from Michigan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's be smart about this. You know what I mean? Let's draft the 6'8" tackle from Boston College. Thank you. Like let's not overthink.
Pedigree is important. It does matter to a certain extent.
We said it with that one. We're just like, listen, they took a tackle from Wisconsin. It's not it's not the dumbest thing in the world to do, because that's what Wisconsin does. So I think that's especially because college football is becoming way more and more have and have nots, right? With the Big Ten and the SEC basically just gobbling up the majority of the talent. If your team is drafting Big Ten and SEC skill positions and trenches guys, you're in good shape.
100%. Yeah, no disagreement there. I really liked Philly's draft. I liked Carolina's, the Bucks, the Ravens, like the typical.
Bucks had a good draft. I like the Bucks draft.
Usual suspects. But it was a fun one, man. We're definitely going to try and do that again next year. The watch along was a rousing success. I had a lot of fun talking with the guests and having you all chime in the chat throughout too. So that was a blast, and glad we got to do this kind of like recap episode and talk about, day 2 and 3 of the NFL draft as well. So
I think next time you'll see us is for probably scheduled release. We'll take a week off and then do scheduled release.
Yep. Probably be back in a couple weeks to talk the schedule release. Hopefully we'll have some Aaron Rodgers news to talk about. We'll see. I'm not too sure.
Start learning that playbook, Aaron.
Yeah, exactly. But we'll be on notice, and we'll keep you updated as always. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, you can check us out at forfantasysakec.com, where the entire For Frequency Sake podcast network lives. You can check out all of the different shows there. And before you know it, there's going to be a lot of fantasy football talk already too. So go check out those shows for sure. But that'll do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We'll see you next time.
This has been a For Frequency Sake Podcast Network production. For more great content, subscribe to For Frequency Sake on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right, man.